Welcome to another video lecture on cultural praxis. In this video, we will be looking at excerpts from Reading the Romance, Women, Patriarchy, and Popular Literature. Reading the Romance is a book by renowned American literary and cultural studies scholar Janice A. Radway. Radway wanted to expose patriarchal culture that pervades modern life in America. She hoped that her writings would motivate society to resist and bring about social change. This is an article that Radway published before the book. The title of the article is Women Read the Romance, the Interaction of Text and Context. This article also gives an overview of what Radway has said in her book. Now, romance novels belong to a fictional genre that focuses on the romantic love between a man and a woman. It is very popular among women readers. Now, what Radway wishes to explore in her book was why this genre was extremely popular among women. Now, most romance novels have a very happy ending that is emotionally satisfying and optimistic. But this genre's extraordinary popularity has been condemned by critics and also feminists. According to them, romance novels reinforce the prevailing cultural code proclaiming that pleasure for women is men. Critics have analyzed the plot of romance novels and come up with the following observations. Romance novels emphasize traditional expectations about male female relationships. The male will always be superior, and the female will always be a submissive and inferior character. Now, such novels propagate patriarchal attitudes and structures by continuing to maintain that a woman's journey to happiness and fulfillment must always be undertaken in the company of a protective man. In romance novels, the women are usually portrayed as, very helpful, very helpless, and vulnerable, and most of them, almost all of them, are dependent on a man to take care of them. We'll take a look at the popularity of romance novels in the USA. Now, the trend began in the 1950s with the publication of Gothic romances. Before that, mystery and detective novels were more popular. Now, romance novels are classified as category literature or formulaic literature. This is because they usually follow a certain formula. The formula will be a romantic relationship between a wealthy, handsome man, usually referred to as TDH, or Mr. Tall, Dark, and Handsome, and uh, spunky, very smart, very intelligent, lively, but vulnerable women. So, this is the formula that most romance novels follow. The Flame and the Flower. It is with the publication of this novel that romance novels became very popular. This novel was read by millions of women across the United States, and also it was the first paperback novel. So, this is another reason for the popularity of romance novels as they were published in paperback. As paperbacks are significantly cheaper than the hardcover versions. So, more people could buy books and thereby increase its popularity. Another movement that made the romance novels more popular is the growth of the feminist movement. This made women more aware of their sexuality and also led to changing beliefs and needs. Now, consistent appeal to a regular audience is another reason for the popularity of romance novels. Although the novels followed the same formula, there were plenty of women readers who used to buy and read romance novels regularly. Radway's rationale for selecting a topic. For selecting the topic. This was fueled by the adverse criticism of feminists, literary critics, and theorists of mass culture. Now, these critics claimed that romances enforce the woman reader's dependence on men and acceptance of the oppressive ideologies supplied by popular culture. Now, Radway challenges this claim by studying the individual reader's engagement with the text in order to understand the popularity of the romance novel. The critics, what they try to do is mainly focus on the content uh, and the form of the novel, whereas Radway wanted to study the effect the romance novel had on the individual reader. So Radway tries to detect the ways in which reading romance novels may serve positive functions, even as the novels celebrate patriarchal institutions. Because of the extraordinary popularity of the romance novels, Radway believed that these novels somehow have a positive impact on the women. Radway also tries to study how some contemporary romances actually attempt to reconcile changing attitudes about gender behavior with more traditional sexual arrangements. Now we come to the cultural praxis part. Now let us see how Radway applies theories for analyzing uh, the extreme popularity of romance novels. Radway mainly uses reader response criticism to analyze the popularity of the romance novel genre. Now, what is reader response criticism? It is a literary theory that focuses on the importance of studying the reader and not just the text. So, this theory studies how each reader responds to a text in his or her unique way and constructs meaning. Now, for her study, what she did was she conducted an ethnographic study of a group of 42 women. Now, ethnography is a study of people and cultures. So she interviewed in the 1980s a group of regular romance novel readers. Now, this group consisted of 42 white middle class married women uh, in a place called Smithton in USA. This was a predominantly urban town. Her aim was to observe how these women actually construct the meaning of the text from within a particular context and on the basis of their attitudes and beliefs. Now, the she was able to meet this group because of a woman named Dorothy Evans. She's called Dot by the women, and this lady Dot works in a bookstore. She is a bookstore employee. She knew around 50 to 75 women who were regular customers of romance novels. Now, Dot was considered to be an expert of the genre because the readers, her customers, used to depend on her. They relied on her advice about regarding the selection of the best romances to buy. Now, Dorothy and her friends, this group of women, believed implicitly in the value of true love and romance, and they enjoyed romance novels mainly because the characters in the romance novels, the women characters in the romance novels, ultimately find men, their ideal soulmates or their ideal partners, who will love them as they wish to be loved. Now, at the time of study, this was in the early 1980s, the 42 women belonged to the age group between the ages of 25 and 44. Now, what Radway found striking was that all the women in the group were obsessed with romantic fiction. They were so obsessed that some of them even read 5 to 9 romance novels in a week. Now, these are a few questions that Radway used to assess the popularity of the romance novels. Why do women read and enjoy romance novels? What type of romance novels do women prefer to read? Are there good and bad romance novels? How does the language of the romance novel affect the readers? So let's take each question one by one. The first one, why do women read and enjoy romance novels? The Smithton women overwhelmingly cited two main reasons, and they were escape and relaxation. So these were their primary objectives. So the novels gave them imaginary escape routes. The act of reading the romance literally draws the Smithton women away from the present surroundings. And one of the women remarked with a note of triumph that my body may be in that room, but I am not. So they are able to escape from the harsh reality of their everyday lives. So the Smithton women see their romance reading as a legitimate way of denying a present reality that sometimes becomes too much to bear. Now, another factor is that this this book reading as a means of escape is better than television viewing because of the cultural value attached to books. And hence, it allows them to overcome the guilt they feel about avoiding their responsibilities. These women are not highly educated, but they have all completed their high school education. And they believe that reading of any kind is by nature educational. So, the characters and the events in romance novels help the Smithton women to take their mind off everyday matters. It is the unreal nature of the romance novel that makes this literal escape more complete and gratifying. They take refuge in a fantastic fairy tale to escape from their bitter everyday experiences, their lives as wives and mothers. So it is this fact that these novels give them a different surrounding, which is very different from everyday living. Why do women read and enjoy romance novels? To continue with that discussion, these are a few more reasons that the Smithton women gave Radway. The first one is vicarious pleasure. Now, vicarious means imagining something to be real. For example, when the women read these novels, they imagine that they are also going through the same experiences as the characters. So, the Smithton women feel refreshed and strengthened by their vicarious participation in a fantasy relationship where the woman is always treated as she likes, as these women would also like to be loved. Now, the act of reading also engages them in a form of quiet rebellion and enables them to reclaim their identity. These women, the Smithton women, they place the book as a barrier between themselves and their families. When they start reading, they create a barrier. This book helps them to create a barrier, a separation between them and their families. Reading being a solitary act, it enables the women to reserve a special space and time for themselves alone. Now, reading romance novels also emphasizes a belief in the creation of a kind of utopian state, an imaginary place where the man is transformed into an ideal partner or an idealized mate by the love of a woman. Again, to conclude, Radway says that romance reading, why do women read and enjoy romance novels? Because romance reading is both an assertion of deeply felt psychological needs and a means for satisfying those needs. Now we move on to the before we move on to the second question, let's take a look at some of the responses of the Smithton women. Radway has recorded these responses in her book. One woman has said, "You always have to be a Mary Poppins. You can't be sad. You can't be mad. You have to keep everything bottled up inside." So this is her problem, or this is the issue that she faces. She can't give vent to her true emotions. She has to keep everything bottled up inside and be very perfect, like the fictional character Mary Poppins, like a magical creature. She is expected to be there for everyone all the time without being happy, without being sad. And for another woman, she loves reading romance novels because it is an escape and it gives her a chance to dream and pretend that it is our life. So it is this pretense that Radway has classified or described as vicarious pleasure. So for a while, they pretend that they are living the lives of the woman character in the novel. Again, this is another response. The romance novels usually turn out the way you wish life really was. So it gives them a glimpse into a different life, a life that they wished for. And again, I enjoy reading because it offers me a small vacation from everyday life and an interesting and an amusing way to pass the time. Now, the second question is what type of romance novels do women prefer to read? Now, these are the responses that Radway got. The Smithton women preferred reading novels that enable them to identify with the story. It should have some realistic elements, and it should also be a novel that allows the readers to reflect on their lives without making any radical changes. Now, these women read the novels only to escape for a while, as we saw in the earlier slide. For some, it was like taking a short vacation. So, they just need to escape for a while. This is a kind of temporary relaxation from their everyday lives. They know that it is not real and that they have to go back to their normal worlds. So, they don't expect the novels to inspire them, to transform them into bold and empowered individuals. They don't really want any kind of changes in their lives. And again, they like novels that never challenge the power of male authority. So this surprised Radway because most of the women were comfortable with accepting male authority and superiority. Uh, so most of the male characters in romance novels are dominant and they are always controlling and superior. And these women also prefer it that way. And invariably, most important thing they preferred in a romance novel was a novel with a happy ending. They do not want to feel sad or depressed after reading a romance novel. They want to feel very optimistic and hopeful. Now, these women also distinguish between good and bad romances. Now, good romances, according to them, contain real world concepts and places. They liked novels with realistic elements, and it should have an unusually bright and determined woman and a man who is spectacularly masculine, but at the same time capable of remarkable empathy and tenderness. And a good novel should avoid promiscuity, perversions, any kind of violence like abuse and rape. And again, a good novel always has a happy ending. And most important of all, a good novel displays the remarkable benefits of conformity. In a good novel, women characters always conform to patriarchal norms because that was found to be beneficial. Now, bad romance novels portray unbelievable plots. They portray exaggerated masculinity, male characters who behaved like superheroes, and depicted cruel men who abuse women verbally and physically. Smithton women also did not like stories that degraded women or depicted immorality and other forms of unconventional romance. They preferred the conventional type of romance that included wooing and courtship and so on. Again, bad novels portray love that does not derive from genuine commitment and attraction. Now we come to the last question. How does the language of the romance novel affect the readers? Now, this is again a characteristic feature of formulaic literature. Because they follow a certain formula, we find the repetitive use of the same limited vocabulary. But the women don't mind because for them, it enabled faster reader comprehension. They were able to read and understand, and it also enabled them to read faster. It facilitated them to make quick sense of the plot. And again, the language was very reassuring. They didn't have to think, rack their brains to, understand anything. It was a kind of an easy read. So this kind of easy reading enabled them to complete almost at least 5 or 9 or 10 novels in a week. So, based on these interviews and her findings, Radway comes to the following conclusions. Feminism has always argued that heterosexual romantic love portrayed in romance novels emphasizes women's subjectivity. So, this is a valid point, but Radway has moved beyond solely negative characterizations to explore how popular understandings of love uplift readers whose experiences have historically been marginalized. Now, these readers are kind of marginalized readers because they read only romance novels. And so Radway says that for them, the experience of reading the romance is uplifting. So it has to be appreciated. Again, the construction of meaning in romance novels is complex and negotiated between the reader and the text, with the reader bringing their own real world experience and knowledge to the text and attempting to make connections between the text and their own world. This is very true with the Smithton women. They read the novels, they kind of indulge in vicarious pleasures, and they try to make some kind of a connection between the novel and their own world. So the Smithton women are characterized rather by a sense of longing caused by patriarchal marriage's failure to address all their needs. So though they don't express their feelings openly regarding uh, their marriage as a fail, regarding things like that, their marriage is probably a failure. Radway realizes that, Radway understands from her conversation with them that this is in their hearts. They feel that their marriages are failure. So that again is one reason that compels them to read such novels, compels them to find comfort by reading the romance. Most readers view the romance stories as part of a single, immutable cultural myth, and the repetition inherent in such stories not as a negative characteristic but rather as part of what makes the stories enduring. This again refers to the fact that romance novels belong to the category formulaic literature. So, although these novels follow a particular formula which is repetitive, it is not a negative characteristic, but it it is it is this fact that appeals to the readers. It makes the stories more enduring to them. Romance reading, in this case, in the case of the Smithton women, might be seen, therefore, as a collectively elaborated female ritual through which women explore the consequences of their common social condition and attempt to imagine a more perfect state. So, it is this state, the perfect state, the ideal state, or the utopian state that most women aspire for, a state where they believe that their man will ultimately be transformed into an idealized or an ideal soulmate who will love them as they would like to be loved. Now, she ends the article with this sentence. At this particular historical moment, the historical moment is the time when she conducted the interviews, the early 1980s. At this particular historical moment, then, romance reading seems to permit American women to adopt some of the changing attitudes about gender roles by affirming that those attitudes are compatible with the social institution of marriage as it is presently constituted. Again, we have already discussed this. These women don't expect any kind of radical change or transformation after reading the romance novels. They don't expect the novels to inspire them to make any uh, huge changes in their life, but they affirm that these attitudes are compatible with the marriages that they are currently in, and they don't find anything wrong with that also. I hope you found this video lecture useful. Thank you so much for your patient listening, and good luck.